Hi, it's Geoff and Lauren here from discoverdoublebass.com. If you haven't been to see our website before, go and check that out. It's full of video lessons, courses to help you learn to play the double bass. And today we're answering your questions, and specifically we're answering Peter's questions. So I'm just going to get straight into it and let you know what he's asking us. So he wants to know whether we can give some thoughts and tips for older students. It would be interesting to know the demographics of your viewers, and if there's an audience for this topic of conversation. Well, definitely there absolutely is, Peter. You know, like we have absolutely tons of older students. I can think of loads that are retired that I know, and also we've got younger students as well. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of people in our audience who are older. And I know that I learned differently when I was a younger person. So what are the strengths and weaknesses of an older learner, and how might we build on your experience or on this experience? Wanting to practice is not the problem. My wife has to pull me off the bass with a stick on occasion. Thanks again, Peter. I just love that question. That's absolutely awesome. And I love this image of him being pulled away from the double bass. Can I just say, I'll just start with this lot on, and I hope I don't steal your question, because we did your answer, because we did briefly touch on this and you mentioned something similar to this, which is that one of the problems that I've noticed when I've been teaching private lessons with older students is that sometimes they get really hung up on the why behind exactly what they're doing. They want to know everything from where you are and how it relates to everything in all that different directions. So if you start saying, if you're teaching a younger student and you say to them, right, we're going to learn dominant seventh arpeggios, they just get on and do it. You know, you tell them to do it or whatever. But a lot of students that I know get drawn into like wanting to understand every aspect about why is a dominant seventh arpeggio different to a major seventh arpeggio. You know, what are the contexts that they use? And I definitely get all of that. I definitely get that, you know, you're intellectually more, I don't know, you maybe think things through differently as an older person. I definitely want to understand these things as well. But one thing that it can do is it can hold you back from making progress because you get so caught up in, and it's the same with things like improvising and creating walking bass lines, or, you know, play music in general, as you get so caught up in the minutiae that you maybe forget just to play, and it becomes harder to make the progress. And I can just think of a couple of students of mine that every time I spoke to them, they would come back with another question that would be, you'd end up having to explain really advanced harmony kind of stuff. When actually it would be easier if you just said, like, the exercise for today is that we're going to be jazz bass player. We're going to be soloing over blues using the blues scale. And they'd be like, great. And then, but the problem with older students is sometimes they can get so drawn into the theory. And why does that note sound good? And you know what? Sometimes it's just not possible to give, to answer that question in a really honest way. How do, you know, because often notes can function in different purposes within, you know, different contexts and things. So you could have, like, it could be that it's functioning as the major third. It could be that it's a leading note, you know. I mean, it could be that the context that it works against the melody. I mean, there's so many different things. And what I just say to you, Peter, is that is just not to get drawn too much into that side of it. And it might be that you're not that kind of person. But I think if you are at home and you're watching, just try and sort of bear that in mind and believe in the person that you're studying with, that what they're asking you to do is for a really good reason, you know.
Right.
And
I definitely agree. Yeah, I definitely agree. And to add to that, I think, you know, when I teach lessons and when I talk to my students, you know, one of the big things that I say and I make a point of saying is, you know, if you work on this and you're practicing, you work on this in these exercises, then it will eventually seep into the rest of your playing. And the reason I say that is because when you're working on a piece, like let's just say the Bottesini Concerto, you know, there's so many things that you need to be focusing on at all times that it doesn't necessarily always make sense for you to be focusing on, you know, curving your fingers, you know, all the time. I mean, yes, you should try to focus on that kind of stuff, but when you have so many things to work on that stuff, you know, when you've got these exercises that are really broken down for you. And, you know, if at some point in the piece you notice, oh, my sound is really thin here. Why does it sound like that? Oh, it's because I'm not using weight. Okay, that's what I've been working on. And then you can make that into an exercise. But I definitely agree with you about, you know, getting into the real nitty gritty about everything and, you know, wondering about specific motions and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I get it. And that's one of the cool things about adult students as well, is that
it's a strength as well. It is actually.
Yeah. And when you tell them, this is beneficial because of this, they get it, and kids, it's not that they necessarily don't get it. They just often don't care. They're just like, okay, like whatever. You tell them to hold a bow a certain way and they're like, okay. And then, they'll be playing and they're like, my fingers hurt. And I'll say, well, just, keep playing. And they say, okay, that kind of thing,
And that's the problem. And you can start suddenly thinking, right, well, okay, should I start changing? Like so many adult learners that I know are the ones that will come into a lesson, they'll be like, I'm going to play French bow now. And you've been playing German bow for the last 6 months or whatever. Yeah. And they suddenly turn up with like, I've just read on the internet that I should play French bow or something, or I've decided I'm going to do a bath technique or I'm going to do, and I'm not saying, listen, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that like you should shut off your intellectual kind of curiosity, but just be aware that it can be a bit of a handbrake sometimes. And I think and really to believe in the teachers that you're working with. I like this, the teachers that I worked with have sometimes told me contrasting things, but I've really had faith in what they've done and got behind, and I've seen the results of that. And just another thing is the one thing that younger students have is that they don't get as embarrassed about stuff. They're not embarrassed about making mistakes. They don't feel it. I see some older learners where they're playing and they're cut up about it. They'll be practicing, they'll be like, oh, that sounds terrible, I just, whatever. And it holds them back, whereas the younger guys are just kind of going through it and they don't, and I think because you've developed this taste, you're used to listening as an older person to like the best bass players from all over the world, and it sounds out of tune and you can't stop thinking about that. The other people are just, younger guys are just thinking about expressing themselves more musically. I mean, this definitely isn't a criticism. I'm just saying that it's something that you should kind of think about. And when I'm jealous of the younger students, because I think this when I'm playing him, I play out of tune, I get caught in my head, and I see these younger people. Yeah.
You can use that as an advantage. Sorry to interrupt you, but you can use that, like your ears are so much more developed because you've been listening to the music that you love, and you can either use that to cut yourself down or you can use that as an advantage because really you already know. I mean, if you've been listening to great bass players, you already know what it sounds like to have a full tone. But if you use that and you're practicing to get yourself all riled up about the fact that your sound broke a little bit or whatever, instead maybe think, okay, why did my sound break? What did I do in my arm? What did I do in my weight to make the sound break? Or ask your teacher, and take that on board and use that to become more aware. Then, you could make so much more progress, and I've seen it, than just getting frustrated because you're not there yet,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's a really interesting topic. And just the one thing I would say is that, you get these young guys that sometimes come along and absolutely knock you out. And you also get young guys who don't do particularly well, and I can think of just as many older students who make amazing progress that I've taught that really inspire me with their playing. So, just fantastic that you're practicing so hard, Peter, and it's brilliant that your wife has to drag you away from the instrument. Keep that going, keep practicing. I can tell that you're one of these people that does really well because you're obviously interested in it enough to ask us a question. You're practicing so hard. You've got all the stuff there. Just keep going at it. And we wish you all the best with your practice. And if you have any questions, please just join us in the comments, and we'd be happy to answer them. And also if anyone else has other experiences as well, it'd be great to hear your thoughts. So thanks for your question, and we'll see everybody next time.